Stop! We just saw this employee making a big mistake. He did not wash his hands after using the restroom. This may seem like a small mistake, but in reality, this can be a major source of contamination to leafy greens. If contaminated, the bacteria on his hands could potentially be transmitted to leafy greens and everything else he touches. The importance of hand washing. In this chapter, we will discuss the importance of hand washing to minimize the risk of leafy greens contamination, and we will go over the proper hand washing procedure that must be followed at work. Let's talk about the single most important food safety practice, hand washing. Hand washing is part of your personal hygiene. Your hands come in contact with many dirty objects and have the potential to become contaminated with soil and microbes. If they are not clean, you can easily pass that contamination to the leafy greens you handle. Hand washing is an easy and effective way to reduce the spread of biological contamination to leafy greens. The rule is simple. Hand washing reduces the number of microbes on your hands and reduces the chance of contaminating the leafy greens you work with. It is the simplest and probably the fastest way to minimize contamination. Keep in mind that improper hand washing has been responsible for a number of foodborne illnesses. You must wash your hands regularly. Always wash your hands before going to your workstation at the beginning of the day. But that's not it. Hand washing must be a regular activity throughout the day to keep your hands clean. Wash your hands regularly. Here you have some hand washing opportunities. Wash your hands before putting on your gloves and starting work. Additionally, you must also wash your hands after doing the following. Using the restroom. This is the most critical time to wash your hands. Taking a break or eating lunch. Coughing or sneezing in your hands. And lastly, you should wash your hands thoroughly any time that they could have become soiled or contaminated. Gloves are an area of concern, since sometimes they give us a false sense of security. Here's another mistake. Let me quiz you. If you wear gloves, does that mean you don't have to wash your hands? The answer is no. Even when using gloves, it is necessary to wash your hands before putting them on. Hand washing is the first line of defense against leafy greens contamination. Gloves provide a second barrier for preventing contamination. You should understand that gloves are meant to protect leafy greens from contamination, not to protect your hands. Keep in mind that reusable gloves must also be washed and then sanitized. Handle gloves as though they were your hands. The general rule about glove usage is always wash your hands before putting the gloves on. It is important to learn the correct procedure for properly washing hands at work. A quick soak or wetting your hands without soap is not good enough. Do you think this worker just washed his hands properly? The answer is no. There are 6 steps for washing your hands correctly. Let's go over each hand washing step. Step 1. Wet your hands with water. In Step 2, you apply soap to your hands. For Step 3, lather and scrub your hands and arms for about 20 seconds. Do not forget the areas under your nails and between your fingers. In Step 4, you need to rinse thoroughly with water. In Step 5, you dry your hands using a clean paper towel. And finally, Step 6. If required for your job, put on your gloves. Please note that some companies might require their employees to use hand sanitizers after hand washing and before putting on gloves. Let's review each hand washing step in more detail. If you do not perform all the steps or do them in the wrong order, you have not washed your hands properly. The first step is to wet your hands with water. In Step 2, you apply soap to your hands. Soap loosens bacteria and soil that adhere to the skin's surface. For Step 3, lather and scrub your hands and arms for about 20 seconds. Do not forget the areas under your nails and between your fingers. Remember, it takes about 20 seconds to do a good job. Create sufficient friction. Friction is probably the most important factor in removing bacteria from hands. Step 4. Rinse thoroughly with water. Make sure to remove all soap during this rinsing. Step 5. Dry your hands thoroughly using a clean paper towel and toss it in the trash can. It is very important to not dry your hands on your work clothes or outer garments. You would recontaminate your hands by doing this. Some companies require their employees to use hand sanitizers after hand washing and before putting gloves on. Other companies also require sanitizer application on gloves. Always follow your company procedure, and if required, do not skip this step. Hand sanitizers can reduce bacteria or microbial populations on clean hands or clean gloves, but they cannot be used by themselves. Always wash hands thoroughly before using sanitizer. Sanitizer should not be used in place of proper hand washing. Lastly, if a hand sanitizer is used at your facility, use only the one provided by the company, not one brought from home. Remember, to protect leafy greens from becoming contaminated, keep your hands clean throughout the day. And if you wear gloves, always wash your hands before putting them on. Always follow the proper hand washing procedure at work.